Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to bury Michigan all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to bury Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to the Visitors Edition of the show for the opener with New Mexico. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Finally, it's time to see Team 146 in action. Joining us today will be Lobo beat writer Sean Reider from the Albuquerque Journal. Before that, my first view from Section 17 for another season. Since the Alabama Bowl game we've all been anticipating this season, it seems like it's taken forever. We knew the defense was going to be good and the offense under Chip Lindsey would improve, even with the new pieces and much heralded freshman quarterback. If there was a black cloud hanging over the program as we waited for this season to get here, it was the NCAA investigation into Signgate. So for 2 years now, we've wondered just how severe the penalties would be, and we just wanted an end to the story. So we got the NCAA's final verdict. It involved a loss of revenue, show causes for Jim, Connor, and Denard, but nothing that would impact Team 146. Other than missing Sharon for 2 games, which is big. So for the most part, that's done for now. Sure, we've appealed the decision, but that could take months or years to resolve, but it's out of the way so we can enjoy this season. And we are ready for another season of Michigan football. And like you, I can't wait. Senior TJ Guy was last year's most improved player. He says that has changed his role on this year's team.
Well, after getting that award, I knew I wasn't going to have a season where I would get that award again, so if that kind of makes sense, I knew I was stepping into a different role this year where I had to be an example for the guys at all times and everything I do. So that's just kind of how I was moving throughout training, preparing my body, finding new ways to get better recovery and things like that.
TJ says that in his opinion, this year's D-line group is deep, versatile, and very close-knit.
Talent, depth, just raw size, different skill sets. I feel like we're more cohesive, but I just feel like if we build on what we got right now, we're going to be a way more cohesive group, playing off of each other and things like that. So I'm excited to see how we go.
My guest today says that this is a huge transitional year for New Mexico football. A new head coach, a new roster for the most part, and a lot of questions. Joining us next on our Visitors Edition is Lobo beat writer Sean Reider from the Albuquerque Journal. So stay with us. Joining us on our first Visitors Edition of the season, of course, because of the opener, is beat writer Sean Reider from the Albuquerque Journal, who covers the Lobos. Great to have you with us, Sean.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Well, a lot of excitement about the upcoming opener, and we do this Visitors Edition each week because we like to get our listeners, Michigan fans, familiar with the opposition, whether it's Big Ten or in the preseason. So let's get to know these Lobos. Last year, they had their best year since 2016, picked up 5 wins, fell just one game short of being bowl eligible, I think it was, with a close loss to Hawaii at the end of the season. You know, all of that done with a very accomplished coach at the helm, Bronco Mendenhall. I think most of us remember him from his BYU days, but he left after one season. And my guess is Lobo fans were expecting him to hang around a while, but it didn't work out that way, did it?
No, yeah, and that was 100% his messaging. You know, he has said it multiple times after leaving. He thought New Mexico was going to be the last spot in the career, and the Utah State job opened up. Obviously, Bronco is a Utah native, and he kind of had some strong family ties back to the area. And left after 1 year, and, obviously the New Mexico fan base was none too happy with that. But now they're working with Jason Eck.
Well, yeah, new head coach Jason Eck, who's very familiar with the Big Ten, also having played at Wisconsin. But he comes over from a 3-year tenure, very successful 3 years at Idaho, which is an FCS-level program. He is considered an up-and-comer in coaching circles. He's 47 years old. And I know he hasn't coached a game there yet, but your thoughts, your impressions on what he's done and how he's impacting the program so far.
I think up-and-comer is kind of the right way to categorize that. And really the job he did at Idaho, which was just decimated by the move from FBS to FCS, and I think in 2014 or around that period. Really, got them back on the map for the first time since then, and probably even a little bit longer, honestly. Definitely, he is a guy that has built his background on the offensive side of the ball, was a very successful coordinator at South Dakota State. He's coached the offensive line the majority of his career, kind of a long, winding journey through Division II ranks and FCS ranks primarily, and just a lot of different spots. But I think the thing with him is that it was always going to be kind of interesting who they brought in to kind of follow Bronco. Because Bronco is just such a unique personality and an accomplished head coach, but very, very unique in how he ran his team and how he kind of worked things out. It's definitely a looser ship, but I would say that probably in a good way. Practices aren't so regimented to a certain extent. And it's clear he's a guy that really wants to embrace the community in a way that, some coaches in the past in New Mexico just haven't quite done. Yeah. Very inviting guy. The kind of go-to line for a lot of people is that he's a guy that, you'd want to share a beer with at some point. And he's just kind of brought that whole energy, and he's brought a lot of strong players from the FCS ranks up as well. His philosophy is that if you're a good player at that level, you'll be a good player in the FBS. And they're going to really stake this first season to that with guys like Scott Trey Humphrey and Keyshawn James Newby kind of coming in.
Well, when the Lobos travel to Ann Arbor for the opener, it's going to be the first time these two teams have ever met. And so I'm sure Michigan fans aren't that up to speed on the current team, maybe even the history of the program. New Mexico, they all know, is in the Mountain West, a very competitive conference. It's one of those conferences I just love watching the games because it's quite a different style of football than we see weekly in the Big Ten. Again, most Michigan fans don't know a lot about New Mexico football, so if you could just speak to some of the accomplishments and things that, Lobo fans are proud of and like to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it is historically a program that has struggled to win. There have been some very good stretches, the Rocky Long years in the 2000s, Rocky Long kind of a guy that was really kind of one of the guys in the forefront of bringing, the 3-3-5 defense into prominence.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of success there with Rocky and all that, and then dipped right back down in the Mike Locksley era. There's been some very good football and some really good players. Brian Urlacher, Terrence Mathis, Robin Cole, who, played here, made their mark here before moving on to different things and all that. Has it been as consistent as fans would like? No. Is it, borderline an existential thing in terms of, hey, we need to get football right or we're going to get left out in the next round of conference realignment? Yes. But yeah, it is a program that people do have a lot of pride in, even if the wins always haven't been there.
Well, Sean, let's get my Michigan listeners more familiar with this Lobo team we're going to see in the opener. The roster is almost entirely different than it was last year. And as happens these days when there is a coaching change, players jump right in the portal. So Coach Eck has, I guess it's an understatement to say this, a lot of new faces to work with, doesn't he?
Yeah, a ton of new faces, and certainly to New Mexico. I'll mention the FCS point. I mean, he played against Scott Trey Humphrey when he was at Montana State last year. Scott Trey actually ran for like 140 yards against New Mexico in the opener at Montana State win last year. But if they're not familiar to New Mexico fans immediately, they're guys, a lot of them are just guys that he knew from playing against them in the FCS or working with them in Idaho. They just named the starting quarterback yesterday, Jack Lane, and he started for them last year. I think 6 games, kind of had a bunch of injuries last year while they were at Idaho. So a lot of guys that he's familiar with, for sure, but definitely a vastly different roster than last year.
Oh, yeah. Well, Sean, let's talk about this offense we're going to see in the Big House in the opener. You just mentioned junior quarterback Jack Lane was officially named the starter, and he did come with Coach Eck from Idaho. He was hurt in spring ball, though, so I'm assuming if he's been named the starter, he's ready to rock. Who else is competing with him or gives them some depth in that quarterback room?
Yeah, James Lobstein was really the one guy that was competing with him. When Lane was sidelined, he played in just one spring practice. He ended up with kind of like a UCL injury that wasn't severe, didn't really require surgery, but they really wanted to just kind of pull him out, want to make sure they weren't making the problem worse without exactly knowing what it was. And that really opened the door for Lobstein to kind of come in and work as a de facto QB1 in spring. And this summer, Eck said, hey, it's going to be a quarterback competition. I think Jack had an advantage coming in. And now that advantage, because of the time he missed, has kind of been really cut into by James, taking the reins and working with it. So I would expect for the Michigan game that Jack plays probably the majority of snaps. I am interested to see if they do end up trying to work James in at some point. Honestly, they have said that even though he isn't the starter, they really want to get in and get him reps in one of the non-conference games. Do I think it'll be Michigan? Probably not, but we'll see.
Michigan fans have never seen Jack Lane play, being out there at Idaho last year. What kind of a quarterback is he, style-wise?
Yeah, definitely a pro-style quarterback, 100%. He can run a little better than you'd think. I would still say that that Lobstein, I thought, was a little better, just kind of running in general and a little better kind of throwing on the run. But definitely, the key to his game is accuracy in the passing game. He's a guy that prides himself on that. He's a guy that honestly, sees the field pretty well too. Eck has said in the past, he's worked with a ton of quarterbacks in the past as a coordinator and as a position coach and all that. And he thinks that Lane is the smartest quarterback that he's ever worked with. And when he's rolling, you can really see that kind of come through in his game.
Well, I don't think there's a running back on the roster, if I read the notes correctly, that had a carry last year. You mentioned Montana State transfer Scott Trey Humphrey, and that he rushed for over 1,300 yards last year. So that, of course, is a big plus. But talk about him, what kind of a running back he is, and who else we might see getting carries for the Lobos in the opener.
Yeah, I thought Scott Trey was honestly probably the biggest get in terms of their portal cycle. It was kind of a get that really kind of shocked me early on, that because his offer sheet in the portal, I think it was North Carolina, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Boise State was interested in him as an Ashton Genty replacement. So to kind of get him, I think he is, UNM has had some good running backs recently. Eli Sanders last year transferred to USC. Nakari Rogers transferred to Utah. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt 2 years ago. Now he's a guy that's expected to really be a dude in that Washington Commanders running back room. But I honestly think at this point, just without having played a game, and the games do matter, that I think that Humphrey is, probably the best that I have seen in my time here. He's powerful. He's fast. He's got some pretty good bursts. I don't know if he has the best burst of anybody in that room. I would say probably Damon Bankston, a Weber State transfer, probably has that title. But Humphrey's going to be the guy that they're really going to want to hand the ball to. He can make things happen. Hard dude to tackle, and he's kind of like built like a Greek god to a certain degree. So anytime you got guys like that in the running back room, coaches are going to feel good.
Oh, yeah, he's one of those guys. I've seen some tape on him. What is he? At least from what I read, he's about 5'8", 210 pounds. But the tape I saw on him, he's one of those, he's a guy that just comes out of nowhere, runs very low to the ground. And yeah, everything I saw on him is he's hard to tackle.
Yeah, hard to bring down.
Well, another key pickup in the portal, though, was Kansas State wideout Keegan Johnson. Talk about what kind of a receiver he is in his supporting cast at the wideout positions.
Yeah, Keegan's definitely going to get looked on to kind of be the wide receiver one of that room for sure. His play speed is pretty awesome. I mean, because he missed the first half of spring practice, and so I didn't see him until kind of later in spring ball until he was healthy. He was coming off I forget exactly what procedure, but recovering from that, and that was the number one thing that stood out and still kind of stands out when he is available. Just his play speed is the best of anybody in that room. And he's not a very big guy. I think he's listed at about 6'1". He's got good contested catchability, and yeah, he's done it. Both in the Big Ten at Iowa and then the Big 12 at Kansas State. So, he kind of has that maturity. He's played a good amount of college football at this point. He is dealing with a hamstring injury right now, working his way back into practice. X said they're optimistic they're going to get him back. And judging by the schedule I've seen in terms of him kind of progressing back into practice gradually, I think it's a pretty safe bet that he will be back, but something to monitor there.
Well, along with all of the new faces on that offense, the O-line is brand new. Never an ideal situation anytime, anywhere. But, as you said, Coach Eck was an offensive line coach for a good part of his coaching career and is highly accomplished at that. So what are you hearing from him as to what he thinks about his offensive line group?
The thing is that he feels great about the interior, and you understand why. Caden Robnett was a guy, super athletic center that played for them at Oregon last year. At Idaho in the Oregon game, and then the Wyoming game. Actually, tore his meniscus first play of the Wyoming game and played the entire game on that. He is about as athletic as I expected. I mean, he's a guy that they're even going to try and pull out of the center spot a couple times too, and he's been pretty good. Richard Pierce, the right guard, he's kind of one of the I don't think he's officially been named a team captain, but definitely will be a team captain. Really the one holdover from last year, played, I think, the most snaps of anybody on that offense last year. Definitely has kind of taken a lot of ownership in the offensive line room as well. And then Israel McWiza was working at left guard too. Mercer transfer. He's a guy that got a lot of buzz, kind of how they performed Mercer against Alabama last year. And the guy that, Eck and company recruited and got him out here, and he's been pretty good so far. The tackles are a little bit more of a question, though, and Eck will kind of admit that. They do still kind of have this, they do kind of still have this right tackle competition that's going into the downstretch of fall camp between Neville Brown and Isaiah Solomon, a guy who has played every position on the offensive line plus a little bit of tight end in the past. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. And then they have Malik Elaine, a guy who was kind of a reserve, played a decent bit last year. That's going to be their starting left tackle.
Well, for Michigan fans that are not familiar with Coach Eck and, the style of offense he likes to run, and maybe this year he'll be a little bit more limited than what he wants to be or wants the offense to grow into in the next few years. But what kind of an offense are we going to see in the Big House?
Yeah, definitely pro style. If you can go back and watch really any of what they did at Idaho the last couple of years, you're basically going to, that's the same thing that they're doing at this point. They've been very upfront about that. Pro style offense, they will do some gap scheme stuff in the run game. They do really like to lean on mid zone. When that's rolling, that's kind of their bread and butter in the run game. They do like that, but they will pull out power every now and then. And then passing game, they do like to take shots downfield. And Eck, for as long as he has been like a coordinator and a guy that's kind of been in charge of a unit, has always been a guy that you kind of hear from other coaches he's worked with in the past that really likes trick plays. So I would bank on seeing at least one trick play in Ann Arbor, and it's something that they like to do on a week-to-week basis.
Well, over on defense, there are 4 returning starters from a unit, though, that ranked near the bottom in most statistical categories nationally. There is a lot of uncertainty on that side of the ball heading into the opener, isn't there?
Absolutely. I'll say this, though, and I've covered 2 pretty horrible years of defense, here at New Mexico. I mean, they were, at or near the bottom of the country in kind of most major statistics the last couple of years. The numbers sometimes didn't always tell the full story, but for the most part, they really did. A lot of uncertainty. You're 100% right. And do I know if they'll be able to stop Michigan, given what Michigan is bringing to the Big House in the opener? I honestly don't think so. But I do think this is probably this defense is the makings of the best kind of defense I've seen in my time here. The front 7, they did a heck of a job and really upgraded it. And I think it'll be good to go for Mountain West play. And it is a 4-2-5 base. They do want to be multiple. They kind of, a lot of that multiplicity is kind of fueled out of the boundary end, their jack spot, and then their nickel star position as well. And the early returns out of those positions have been pretty strong so far, but we'll see how it holds up against Michigan. But I do think it will be a competitive unit in the Mountain West, perhaps the strength of the team.
Well, other than the returning starters, are there some names you can talk about that have made impressions on that side of ball in camp?
I'll say this. He's not technically a returning starter in the traditional sense. Tavian Combs is going to be UNM's starting boundary safety when they do go to the Big House. He missed pretty much essentially all of last year with the exception of, I think, like 5 snaps at San Diego State coming back from a leg injury. And then he missed half the season the year before. So really he's had a long kind of injury plagued road. He's in his 6th year of college football. And he is a guy that, you always wonder when a guy has that many injuries, if he's going to play, a little bit more hesitant or if he's going to play with more issues and stuff like that. And this fall camp has been a real pleasant surprise. I mean, he is, honestly, probably the hardest hitter in the secondary at this point. He's a guy that's been up front, says he craves contact, craves making plays in the run game and all that. So I think he's got that boundary safety position kind of on lock at this point, and I think he's a guy that can really make a big impact this season.
Well, at the top of the show, we talked about the fact that Coach Eck in 3 years really did an outstanding job at Idaho. During his time there, he beat Wyoming, Nevada, gave Oregon a heck of a scare in Eugene last year, and he knows what a challenge the Michigan game is. But, from his past and also being a Big Ten guy, he's the kind of coach who seems to relish those big-time matchups, isn't he? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, he's kind of made that a point. When you even talk to players, they mentioned that, how excited they are to go to the Big House and excited to go to the Rose Bowl and play UCLA this year and all that. It's definitely, there's some guys have kind of referred to it as a little bit of a chip on the shoulder, coming up from the FCS level and making it happen that way. But yeah, they definitely relish it and, definitely want to give it their all heading in.
Well, final question before we let you get away, Sean. From a Lobo perspective, you're making the long trip to Ann Arbor to play. The atmosphere should be phenomenal. Unlike anything the Lobo players have seen so far in their careers, maybe Eugene was pretty darn close to it. That's a crazy place to play. And we know winning's the goal, but for Coach Eck, first year of a new program, I suppose you have to convince and sell your kids that this is a great opportunity for the team and the program, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've been on the beat, heading into this is my 3rd season, so 3 different coaches each year. First year they played Texas A&M. Last year they went down to Auburn and played that. And far and away, this is the most I've ever heard a P4 kind of program that they're going up against get referenced in practice and all that. I mean, it's the first game of the season, so it's always going to be an emphasis. Yeah. But 100%, I just haven't seen a staff really emphasize this opportunity quite like this.
Well, everyone's looking forward to it. We've been waiting for football. It seems like a long time now.
Yeah.
So we're just days away from the opener in the Big House with New Mexico. And our guest today here to get us up to speed and learn a little bit more about New Mexico football has been beat writer Sean Reider from the Albuquerque Journal. Sean, thanks for being so gracious with your time, and we hope you enjoy the trip and the game in the Big House.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, definitely looking forward to it.
On Quick Hits today, once again, Sharon says the team has stayed healthy for the most part during camp, other than bumps and bruises. We did have, of course, the season-ending injury to Michigan freshman tackle Andrew Balboa. That so far has been the only serious injury, so knock on wood, nothing happens before now and game day. Thanks again to New Mexico beat writer Sean Reider from the Albuquerque Journal for being our guest today. On Thursday, we'll be back with our Michigan Game Day show. Our guest to kick off the season is beat writer Angelique Shengelis from the Detroit News, the Angel of the Big House. We'll also have news and notes about the opener and a look at the weather for this much-anticipated Saturday night opener. So make sure you join us. A reminder to follow us on X and Facebook, tell your friends about the show, and if you have a minute, leave comments or a review wherever you get your podcast from. That does it for now. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until Thursday, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!